It's time to do some routine maintenance on the Aprilia scooter. Hello my friends, and welcome to Tom's Tinkering and Adventures. Today we're going to do some routine maintenance on the scooter that I recently purchased here. This is a 2004 Aprilia Atlantic 500, and it has 650 miles on it. And as you know, that's a 16-year-old, 17-year-old bike at this point. So it's been sitting a lot. So we're going to go ahead and do tires, oil change, and brake fluid flush, and anything else that we see that comes up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the tire change. I certainly hate changing tires that have so much tread remaining on them, but I don't know how well you'll be able to see it on the video, but there's some serious sidewall cracks on these, so it's time to change them out. They've just aged out. Now, scooters can sometimes be a pain, and this one looks like it's no exception. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove this entire muffler here. Hopefully that's not too difficult. And then the rear swing arm is in two pieces. So once we take a few other auxiliary bits off, probably the brake hose up here, then we have to take this whole side of the swing arm off, and then probably the brake caliper. This shock, I imagine, has to come off, and then the wheel will come off. So I'm going to start removing items. We'll get to this muffler, and I'll show you any tricky bits. Even though it's a minor pain in the rear, it's not too bad. The exhaust has got a clamp right up at the front here, and then 3 bolts, then that comes out. The shock, I just removed these 2 off of this mount, and then 2 bolts for the brake caliper and 1 for a clamp. And then there are 2 big Allen head bolts on the swing arm right there, and then the center nut right there, which is a 24 millimeter, and I used my impact wrench to get that off. I imagine if you don't have an impact, you could probably leave the brake on, hold the rear brake, and get it with a breaker bar. That would probably work. So let's get this last bolt out and see if this swing arm comes off. That bolt came out no problem. There we go. I'm just hanging up there. There we go. All right. It looks like there's a spacer, and our wheel is off. And I just have to get it past this here, trying to hold the camera and do this at the same time is harder than you'd think. There you go. See that? Yeah. So I'm going to change this tire. I don't need to make a tire change video, but just wanted to kind of show how this comes off, and then put everything back up. Read your manual for any torque specs for any of the big stuff, like probably this, the nut that goes on the other side of this, the main retention nut, and then these 2 big Allen head bolts. I'm sure the torques are pretty vital on those. Well, there we go. Got the new tire on there. Now I just bought a reasonably priced tire here. These are Shinko scooter tires. I've ran Shinko tires before, even on my big bikes. I'm pretty pleased with them. I know they're a lower end tire, but for the price, you can't go wrong. It was a $45 tire, and I thought this was going to be more of a pain than it turned out to be. I probably have 45 minutes into it, including changing the tire. I haven't put the exhaust back on because we're going to do brake bleed and oil change, and there's a little bit better access right now since we already have it off. So it's not that big a deal. Of course, I've got some power tools to help, but even without them, it's still not that big of a deal. So now onto the front tire. I'm hoping this will be a little bit easier. It might be just as difficult. We got 2 brake calipers, so remove those off of each side. We have a pinch bolt here, it looks like, to pull the axle out. I don't see one on that side, so remove the brake calipers, remove the pinch bolt, and the bike seems to be forward bias as far as the weight while it's on the center stand, so I may have to set something on the seat to lean it back. And even then, the tire might not come out without taking the front fender off, so I'll let you know. I'm going to take the calipers and the axle bolt out, and we'll come right back. I put a jack stand underneath these engine guards, or whatever you'd call them. I guess they're not really engine guards, crash guards, to hold the bike up. Pulled the axle out, and I had the wheel off. Now, one thing you want to pay attention to on a wheel like this, it's got dual calipers, and it looks the same, is to make sure that you put the tire on the right way. A lot of times the wheel is marked. See that one? It's got an arrow. Sometimes you can't find it, or it's hard to find. So a grease pencil, or even like a Sharpie marker, just to put an arrow. You can write it inside here so you can't see it as well. You can always take a Sharpie marker off with alcohol or something like that. But make sure that you mark it so that you make sure it goes back on the right way. So I'm gonna change that tire and we will reinstall. Okay, I'm sitting on the left-hand side of the scooter here, and down here is the oil drain plug. In their infinite wisdom, they put it right above the pivot for the swing arm, or for the center stand. And it's also a 24 millimeter, which is crazy. I mean, maybe there's a screen or something underneath it, but I'd say the majority of people don't have a 24 millimeter wrench or socket, you know, your home mechanics. So I don't know why they would make it like that. But anyway, I grabbed this out of my mail, and we'll put that over that. Hopefully that'll help funnel it into here and we won't make too big of a mess. Let's see what happens. Yeah, there does appear to be like a filter or something in there. I'll get a pliers and see if I can pull that out. But yeah, kind of silly the way they set this up. There's a screen inside of there. I don't know why it's shaped like that. Probably because it's a crappy fit. But take a look at that. Make sure there's no chunks in it. Clean it up with whatever you happen to have. Brake cleaner works good. Old gasoline works okay. And we'll finish draining here pretty soon. Now I'm seated on the right-hand side of the scooter. And like I said, I had the exhaust off, so a little bit easier access to the filter. Filter's right there. So I'm gonna remove that filter and we'll change that. Oh, and look at how lucky you are, right there's the oil fill. Now this is the stock filter that came off of this bike, so if you want to stay with the stock stuff, that's what you're going to use. I've also heard high flow, HF 184, K&N 184, and a few others, so you can cross-reference it if you'd like to, but that's the stock one. And there's these sites here that cross-reference filters, so you can check those if you'd like. It's up to you. And right here is what it says to use for the oil. It says to use 5W40 synthetic oil, and it's 1700 cc's, 1.7 liters, which is just under 2 quarts. Here I have an empty quart jug here. This is empty. I'm not using this, so don't freak out. See, 1 US quart is 0.946 liters, so 2 quarts would be, you know, what, 1.9? So a little bit less than 2 quarts. Well, I'll tell you this, that's probably the least convenient oil fill. There's no room to get a funnel in there at all, so you better have a funnel with a long flexible hose, or one of those long neck, like S-curve funnels with a small tip to get in there, because what a pain that thing is to fill up. But we got that done. I'm going to see if I can find the procedures for resetting the service message on the dash. I already did that. I was messing around with it and I did it. I should have showed it on the video, but I'll find the procedures and I'll show them on here. Okay, hopefully this will show up okay. I'm just filming it off my laptop. You really need two people to do this. So turn the ignition on, press the mode button until you get your service mileage, then shut the ignition off. Now you have to hold the mode and reset at the same time and then turn the ignition on. Now, when I go over here, I'll show you how almost impossible that is. Your mode button's here, your reset button is there, and your ignition is there. So one hand holding this, one hand holding this, and I guess you could turn that with your teeth. Yeah, get a friend to help you out with that. But that'll get rid of the service. It should come on automatically at around 600-ish miles, and then 3,000 or 4,000 miles, something like that afterwards. So now we got the oil change done. Let's bleed the brakes. Okay, a couple things here, at least on this scooter, Aprilia Atlantic 500. Well, pretty much any Japanese bike, and I guess it works for Italian bikes too. Get yourself a good quality JIS screwdriver. These, even though they're Grimica, which I believe is Italian, they still are using Japanese screws. Yeah, there is a difference between a Phillips head and a JIS, Japanese Industrial Standard. And if you've ever taken these caps off of a motorcycle, the screws strip out all the time. It's probably because you're using a Phillips screwdriver rather than a JIS screwdriver. Thank you to my brother. Hope he still watches my videos. And the reason why we're doing this with a low mileage bike is that it's a high in years bike. Not terribly high in some people's opinion, but that's supposed to be clear, and it's kind of like a coffee colored. Now, this scooter has linked brakes, so the right hand brake, which is usually your front, controls the left hand front caliper only. And the left hand handle over here, which would be your clutch on a regular motorcycle, but it's your rear brake on a scooter, controls the rear brake and the right front caliper. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove as much of this fluid as we can. I've got a little like a turkey baster type thing. Remove that, fill it full, and we're going to bleed out. So I'll show you quickly how we're going to do that. Got my 8mm wrench on my bleed screw hooked into my drain hose here, my collection can, and we have put some fresh fluid in there. I'll put you all the way back here. You'll see how the logistics of this works. This is probably something that'd be best to have a buddy as well. I ain't got nobody today, so of course squeeze your brake and then open the bleed valve, close the bleed valve, release the brake. So we're going to do that a few times until we see clean fluid running out over here. You can see the fluid coming out of there is pretty dark still, so I'm going to have to do that same rodeo a few times. All right, so now we got oil changed, tires changed, brake fluid has been changed, and that's just some of the things that you can do for maintenance. Of course, you still have air filter, spark plug, the rear final drive, valve adjustments. So there's lots of other little maintenance items, but these are just a couple of the simple ones that you can do on this bike. And I think one of the biggest things is how to reset that service deal. And like I said, two people probably. I did it by myself, but I'm not really proud of how I did it. I took a wooden dowel about 2 or 3 feet long and put it there, and I held it with my chest, which is about where I'm holding the camera right now. So it held that one, and then my left hand held whatever it was over here, the mode button, and then my right hand turned on the key switch. So where there's a will, there's a way. Okay, hopefully that video helps you out a little bit. If you're liking my content, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and if you're not already a subscriber, please consider doing so. Thank you very much for watching. Get out there and find your adventure. Adios.